Hello, Nicolas. It's great to have you here. You've been our ambassador to Mexico for since the beginning, actually, and you were there in Paris when we first met for our first Blue Like an Orange Day two years ago. I know you have a passion for the Sustainable Development Goals. You've developed it for your company, for Mexico, and I would like to have your take on the situation of the SDG in Latin America, in particular in light of the COVID pandemics. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. As you know, I'm your ambassador, and as much as I can do, I'll continue doing it. And thank you, Bertrand, also for this space. The UN's 2020 CDGs reported showed that the world is not on track to achieve the goals by 2030. Before the COVID-19 outbreak, progress had been bumping, and then the pandemic abruptly disrupted implementation towards many of the SDGs. In some cases, it has turned back decades of progress. The environmental dimension of the 2030 agenda needs to be secured to support the progress of social economic targets. In June 2020, Alicia Bárcenas, Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, published the results of an analysis of progress based on 72 statistical series for the region's SDGs indicators. The outlook has worsened by the expected impact of COVID-19. The pandemic will likely pave the way for the largest recession the region has experienced since 1930, with a projected growth of minus 5.3%, which will generate almost 12 million more unemployed and an increase of almost 30 million people in poverty. Furthermore, the stability of the region is at risk, and an increase in unemployment, inequality, poverty, and hunger are ingredients for more social conflicts and unrest. We are already witnessing this in Colombia, Chile, Bolivia, and Ecuador. In these four countries, massive protests against the government broke out in 2019, and in some of them, the police and the military forces took to the streets to stop the demonstrations, resulting in dozens of deaths, hundreds of injuries, and social and political chaos. Colombia, in particular, has recently seen ongoing strikes and protests in the streets of the largest cities in response to a fiscal reform the president was trying to bypass. The massive protests now include claims of equal access to health services and more financial aid, higher security, among others. Overall, Latin American governments need to perceive the SDGs as a single whole concept. Prioritizing or excluding some indicators might derail progress and hamper development. They need to work alongside the private sector and civil society to achieve multidimensional goals.
Thank you very much. It's again this background that we are finding a lot of investment opportunities. I mean, all over the continent, in particular in Mexico, where we've put a renewed emphasis to a point where we are considering opening a permanent office in the country. So given that you are speaking to us from Mexico, we'd be very keen to hear your view on the situation of Mexico today and your perspective on the country.
That's right, Bertrand. I am here in Mexico, in a very small city, Mexico City. As you know, Mexico is among the world's 15 largest economies, and it's the second largest economy in Latin America. The country is highly dependent on the United States, its largest trading partner and destination of nearly 80% of exports. However, this presents great investment opportunities for other countries and multinational companies. Besides Mexico, to heavily rely on oil exports, but NAFTA, now USMCA, allowed for more diversification, and now top exports pertain to manufacturing industries such as electronics, devices, automobile parts, etc., as well as agriculture, tomato, avocados, shrimps. According to the latest data from the World Bank, agriculture accounted for 3.38% of Mexico's GDP in 2019 and employed 12.4% of the country's active population in 2020. Mexico is the world's seventh agricultural power and ranks among the world's largest producer of such products as coffee, sugar, corn, orange, avocados, and limes. Cattle, farming, and fishing are also important activities in the food industry. Mexico is also the world's fifth largest producer of beer, and it is the largest exporter. Although the COVID-19 pandemic created significant challenges, the agriculture sector has been one of the more privileged sectors in Mexico, as it wasn't as deeply impacted as others and even showed periods of small growth. Industry employs 26.1% of the workforce and represents nearly 30.8% of GDP, according to the World Bank. Mexico is among the largest leading producer of many minerals, including silver, fluoride, zinc, and mercury. Moreover, oil and gas reserves are one of the country's more precious possessions. The aerospace sector has grown sharply thanks to the development of a cluster in Querétaro and the presence of nearly 109 companies, including Bombardier, Goodrich, the Safran Group, and Honeywell, which together employ 30,000 people. Mexico is also one of the world's 10 largest car producers, and due to significant real estate investments, the construction sector is dynamic. In 2020, however, the manufacturing sector was deeply affected by the pandemic, especially the automotive, the textile, and the beverage industries. It is worth noting that Mexico is one of the countries with the highest number of free trade agreements signed with other countries, as tally goes up to 44 trade partners. According to the IMF, the GDP contracted by an estimated of minus 8.2% in 2020. Due to the outbreak of COVID-19, however, the country is expected to recover in the coming years. As the IMF's April 2021 forecasted projects a growth of 5% for 2021 and 3% for 2022, subject to post-pandemic global economic recovery. Tourism dropped drastically due to the COVID, like the rest of the world, but has seen a recent uptick as vaccination spreads worldwide, countries reopen borders, and people are eager to travel. Mexico regains popularity as a destination. The country recorded a budget deficit of an estimated 2.8% in 2020, a rate that should remain stable in 2021 and decrease to 2.3% in 2022. Spending priorities include social programs, the creation of the National Guard fighting rising crime, and new funds to support Pemex, whose rating was downgraded by Fitch due to uncertainty around its future strategy and financial and financial stress. The sector is of a pivotal importance to the Mexican economy, as oil production accounts for 1/3 of the government revenues. Inflation has been above target since 2017. However, it slowed down to 3.4% in 2020 due to lower fuel prices and the pandemic. Inflation should reach 3.5% in 2021 and 3.1% in 2022. Boosting purchasing power and private consumption, Mexico unemployment rate increased to 4.4% in 2020, mainly due to the negative economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it is expected to slightly decrease to 3.6% in 2021. However, the informal sector is still estimated to involve around 60% of employment, OECD. Key challenges which remain to be tackled include high dependence on the US economy, high and rising criminality rates, income inequality, weakening infrastructure and education, and decades of underinvestment in the oil sector.
Well, thank you very much. Just to conclude our discussion, if I tell you blue like an orange, what would you say in a few words?
For me, blue like an orange has been very important since we started. But let me tell you, when I think of blue like an orange, the first term that comes to my mind is infrastructure, development. And as you know, our company has been for 5 generations involved in construction. Something that I would like to share with you is what's happened. Something my country desperately needs, it's infrastructure. López Obrador government declared economic reforms as its priority, including reforms of the legislation in the energy, financial, and fiscal and telecommunication sectors, along with an overall objective of a more equitable income distribution. However, the pandemic and the inefficiency of its socio-economic policies have deterred the expected results. Mexico will deeply benefit from private and international funding, credits, and financing. The Mexican president has not used stimulus programs to support business and the unemployment share of the population during the COVID-19. Mexico is the 4th most hit country in terms of total death toll induced by COVID-19. The economic recovery plan in response to the economic crisis resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic has been heavily criticized for not being very detailed and being far smaller than the fiscal stimulus enacted in other emerging markets. According to the president, the money for the package came from reduced spending and salary cuts for high-level bureaucrats. Some of the measures employed by the government, adding up to 2% of GDP, include higher health expenditure, anticipated also pension payments by 8 months, lending to companies and workers at a low rate, and providing liquidity support and guarantees by development banks. However, when compared to other countries, we're slightly above Uganda, terrible, in terms of share of our GDP allocated to the response. If the government is unable to adequately manage the situation, private companies, capital funds, investors, and development platforms should jump and take action. And this is precisely when blue like an orange can come in.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Thank you very much.